Albert Einstein had several opinions on wealth and the wealthiest people in the world, which reflect his broader social and economic views. Here are some key points about Einstein's perspectives. 1. Critique of capitalism. Einstein was critical of capitalism, believing it led to significant inequalities and exploitation. He felt that capitalism created an oligarchy where the wealthy few held disproportionate power and influence over the masses. In his 1949 essay, Why Socialism?, Einstein argued that the economic anarchy of capitalist society as it exists today is, in his opinion, the real source of the evil. He criticized the concentration of wealth and the impact it had on democracy and social justice. Support for socialism. Einstein supported democratic socialism. He believed that a planned economy that shared resources more equitably would ensure that everyone had access to essential services and opportunities, reducing the vast disparities seen under capitalism. He argued that socialism aimed to protect individuals from the unpredictable and often harsh consequences of capitalism, promoting a more just and humane society. 3. Views on wealth and morality. Einstein often expressed that moral values and human dignity should not be subordinate to economic interests. He believed that the pursuit of wealth for its own sake was morally questionable and detrimental to society. He stressed the importance of modest living and was concerned that excessive wealth could lead to moral decay and a lack of empathy for the less fortunate. Number 4. Philanthropy and responsibility. While critical of wealth concentration, Einstein also recognized the potential positive impact of philanthropy. He believed that wealthy individuals had a responsibility to use their resources to benefit society, particularly in supporting education, scientific research, and social welfare. Einstein's views on the wealthiest people and wealth distribution were intertwined with his broader social and political beliefs, emphasizing equity, social justice, and the well-being of all individuals over the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few. Albert Einstein's opinions on wealth, capitalism, and socialism were deeply rooted in his broader philosophical views on human society and ethics. Here are more detailed aspects of his perspectives. Critique of capitalism. 1. Economic inequality. Einstein observed that capitalism inherently led to significant economic inequality. He believed that the system allowed a small number of individuals to accumulate vast wealth while many others lived in poverty. He argued that this inequality was not just a moral failing, but also a practical issue that led to social instability and hindered human potential. 2. Economic anarchy. In his essay, Why Socialism?, published in 1949 in the Monthly Review, Einstein criticized the chaotic nature of capitalist economies. He described capitalism as an economic system that created cycles of boom and bust, leading to periodic crises that disproportionately affected the working class and poor. Number 3. Oligarchy and democracy. Einstein was concerned that capitalism tended to concentrate power in the hands of a wealthy elite, undermining true democracy. He believed that political decisions were often influenced by the interests of the rich rather than the needs of the general population. Advocacy for socialism. 1. Planned economy. Einstein argued that a planned economy, where production and distribution were regulated, could prevent the wasteful and destructive tendencies of capitalism. He believed that such an economy could ensure that everyone's basic needs were met. 2. Individual and collective well-being. He advocated for a form of socialism that balanced individual freedoms with collective responsibility. Einstein emphasized that socialism should aim to improve the well-being of all individuals, not just the majority. 3. Educational and social welfare. Einstein supported policies that would provide universal access to education and healthcare. He saw these as fundamental rights that should not be determined by one's economic status. Moral and ethical views. 1. Einstein believed in the inherent dignity of every human being. He argued that society should be organized in a way that respected and promoted human dignity, rather than allowing it to be eroded by economic exploitation. 2. Modesty and simplicity. Personally, Einstein lived a relatively modest life. He valued simplicity and believed that excessive wealth and materialism were distractions from more meaningful and fulfilling pursuits, such as intellectual and creative endeavors. 3. Social responsibility. He believed that those with wealth had a moral obligation to use their resources for the betterment of society. He praised philanthropy when it was directed towards education, scientific research, and social causes. Practical involvement. 1. Political engagement. Although Einstein was primarily a scientist, he was also politically active. He was involved in various movements and organizations that promoted peace, civil rights, and social justice. He supported labor unions and was a member of the NAACP, advocating for racial equality. 2. Public statements. Einstein often used his public platform to speak out on social and political issues. He wrote articles, gave speeches, and signed petitions that aligned with his views on social justice and economic reform. Key quotes. 1. On capitalism. The economic anarchy of capitalist society as it exists today is, in my opinion, the real source of the evil. 2. On socialism, I am convinced there is only one way to eliminate these grave evils, namely through the establishment of a socialist economy, accompanied by an educational system which would be oriented toward social goals. Einstein's views were shaped by the historical context of his time, including the Great Depression, the rise of totalitarian regimes, and the aftermath of World War II. He sought a balance between individual freedom and social equity, advocating for a system that could harness the strengths of both while mitigating their weaknesses. Albert Einstein's perspectives on wealth, capitalism, socialism, and societal organization are rich and multifaceted. Here's a deeper dive into his thoughts and the context that shaped them. Historical context. 1. Early life and influences. Einstein was born in 1879 in Germany, a time of rapid industrialization and significant social change. Growing up, he witnessed the disparities between the wealthy industrialists and the working class. His exposure to these inequalities likely influenced his later critique of capitalism. 2. World wars and economic crises. The economic turmoil of the early 20th century, including the Great Depression and the rise of fascism, deeply affected Einstein. He saw how economic instability and inequality could lead to social unrest and authoritarian regimes. These experiences reinforced his belief in the need for a more equitable economic system. Critique of capitalism. 1. Exploitation and alienation. Einstein believed that capitalism led to the exploitation of workers and alienated them from the products of their labor. He argued that under capitalism, workers were seen merely as cogs in the machine, rather than as individuals with inherent worth and dignity. This alienation, he believed, not only harmed individuals, but also society as a whole, by stifling creativity and human potential. Number 2. Materialism and consumerism. Einstein was critical of the materialistic values promoted by capitalist societies. He believed that the constant pursuit of wealth and consumer goods detracted from more meaningful human pursuits, such as intellectual growth, creativity, and community. 3. Impact on democracy. He warned that capitalism concentrated economic power in the hands of a few, which in turn translated into political power. This undermined democratic principles, as policies were often made in the interests of the wealthy rather than the general populace. Einstein saw this as a fundamental threat to true democratic governance and social justice. Advocacy for socialism. 1. Economic planning and equity. Einstein argued for a socialist economy where production and distribution were planned to meet the needs of all people, rather than driven by profit motives. He believed that such a system could prevent the wastefulness and cyclical crises inherent in capitalism. He envisioned a society where resources were distributed more equitably, ensuring that everyone had access to basic necessities such as food, shelter, education, and healthcare. 2. Intellectual and moral development. In a socialist society, Einstein believed that individuals would be freed from the constant struggle for economic survival. This would allow them to focus on intellectual, artistic, and moral development. He saw education as a crucial component of socialism, aiming to cultivate responsible and informed citizens who could contribute positively to society. 3. Democratic socialism. While advocating for socialism, Einstein emphasized the importance of democracy and individual freedoms. He opposed totalitarian forms of socialism, such as those seen in the Soviet Union. He believed in a democratic socialism that balanced collective responsibility with individual rights and freedoms, ensuring that the government remained accountable to the people. Moral and ethical views. 1. Humanitarianism and pacifism. Einstein was a committed humanitarian and pacifist. He believed that social systems should prioritize human welfare and peaceful coexistence. His opposition to war and violence was consistent with his critique of economic systems that fostered competition and conflict rather than cooperation and mutual support. 2. Philanthropy and social responsibility. Although critical of wealth concentration, Einstein recognized the potential of philanthropy to address social issues. He believed that the wealthy had a moral duty to use their resources for the greater good. However, he also argued that systemic changes were necessary to address the root causes of inequality and poverty, rather than relying solely on the benevolence of the rich. Personal practices and public engagement. 1. Modest lifestyle. Einstein himself led a relatively modest lifestyle. Despite his fame and success, he was known for his simplicity and frugality. He valued intellectual pursuits and personal integrity over material wealth. This personal example reinforced his public criticisms of materialism and consumerism. 2. Public advocacy. Einstein was not just a passive critic. He actively engaged in public discourse and advocacy. He wrote extensively on social and political issues, delivered speeches, and supported various progressive causes. He was involved in the civil rights movement in the United States, advocating for racial equality and justice. He corresponded with leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and was a member of the NAACP. 3. Legacy and influence. Einstein's social and economic views have had a lasting impact, inspiring subsequent generations of thinkers and activists. His critique of capitalism and advocacy for socialism continue to resonate in contemporary debates about economic justice and social equity. Key quotes. 1. On democracy and socialism. I am convinced that a society's economic system, which is built on private profit and private property, necessarily brings about and fosters great inequality of wealth and power. On economic and social justice. The individual has become more conscious than ever of his dependence upon society, but he does not experience this dependence as a positive asset, as an organic tie, as a protective force, but rather as a threat to his natural rights, or even to his economic existence. Einstein's views were a product of his time, shaped by the social, economic, and political upheavals he witnessed. His advocacy for socialism was rooted in a profound commitment to human dignity, social justice, and the betterment of society as a whole. His ideas remain relevant today as we continue to grapple with issues of inequality, economic instability, and the search for more just and equitable social systems.